Hi, my name is Tena Dodds and I'm a BQH practitioner. And I decided to go out of my box and do this video to introduce myself to you and tell you a little bit about my story and how I came to BQH, which is now my passion and the love of my life. But first, I had to go through a lot of trauma and pain and suffering to get here and heal from all of it. So I grew up in what I thought was a normal household, had a normal childhood. 2 parents, 2 brothers, and everything was pretty good until my early 20s when I started having anxiety and panic attacks. And I didn't know why. I didn't know where it was all coming from and what was going on. And at the time it was really difficult. So, I would go to the doctors and they would give me antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds and all kinds of prescription drugs. They were just thrown at me and I was taking them because that's what you do. I went into the medical field, I became a nurse, and so I was really entrenched in that idea of modern medicine. Around that same time, I had a couple surgeries for stage 4 endometriosis. I had suffered with pain ever since I was 13 years old and never knew the reason why. Finally found out it was the endometriosis, and I had 2 surgeries. And after those surgeries, I started getting really ill, having weird symptoms, just random pain and migraines and fatigue. And I couldn't do what I would normally do. Like I would spend 2 hours in the gym every day, and I was in the best shape of my life before the surgeries, and I started getting symptoms. And I went for years not knowing what it was, what was causing these symptoms. Doctors couldn't tell me, the tests weren't coming back. I got a diagnosis of Lyme disease, eventually Lyme disease, then lupus, and mixed connective tissue disease, fibromyalgia. All of these labels that really didn't tell me anything about what was going on. Also around that same time, my parents were really ill. And I also had to take care of my 88-year-old grandfather who had Alzheimer's. So I would work night shifts at the hospital and come home in the morning and take care of him, which was really difficult. And I would also have to check on my parents to make sure they were still alive because they were really ill as well with heart disease and COPD. So they were on oxygen and tons of meds and really weren't doing well. My grandfather ended up dying in 2008, and around that time I just couldn't function anymore. I couldn't work. I just couldn't function in the world. My anxiety was so bad that I developed PTSD from seeing my mom have a grand mal seizure. And after that, I just had such a hard time in the world, trying to take care of all of them and myself, and it was just so overwhelming that I had to take some time off of work. So I did that. And during that time, I was taking care of my parents, who were progressively getting worse and worse. And I didn't have much help. And then 2 years after my grandfather died, my mother-in-law, she had breast cancer that spread throughout her body and her brain, and she died. that was a really tragic, hard death. And then 2 months to the day after that, my mom died on my dad's birthday, April 27th. And that day, she was already in the hospital. I was going to visit her. And as I was leaving, my dad said that he wanted to go too, but he wanted to go to the emergency room himself because he now wasn't feeling well. And we had been in and out of the hospital many, 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 many times. But this time it felt different. And as we walked into the emergency room, I got a phone call that my mom had died. And I didn't tell my dad right away. I got him situated in a room in emergency, and then I went upstairs to find out what happened to my mom. And she had been in there for a week, and the night before I had visited her, and they told me she was going to go home or to a rehab. And I asked the nurse, I said, what do you mean she's going home? She's exactly the same way as when she came in here. Nothing has changed. So I asked her to check a sputum culture that they had done when she first arrived. And the nurse came back frantic because it contained MRSA. And MRSA is a highly resistant bacteria. So they started rushing around, taking her for tests, starting antibiotics, and all of that kind of stuff. And I left that night. Not knowing that I would never see her alive again. She died the next day as we were walking in the hospital. And our mom was our everything. She held the whole family together. Me and my brothers and my dad, she was everything to us. And it was my worst fear, my mom dying. She was 56. It was my worst fear. So I went in to tell my dad, and he already knew. I didn't even have to tell him. And in the months following, he progressively got worse. I knew he wasn't going to be able to live without her. It's true that people die from broken hearts. His heart was already sick, so that just threw him over the edge. And 2 months to the day later, he had a heart attack, and my brother found him and ran to get me. And he was still alive, but I knew it was really serious this time. So I called the ambulance and rode with him on the way. And he was gone by the time we got there. This was a really traumatic time for me, for all of us. And, I still wasn't doing well. I was dealing with all my own symptoms and problems, and this kind of just threw me over the edge and led me down a road of destruction. Part of me was relieved that they were gone because they weren't suffering anymore. And after that, my husband and I moved to New Jersey, and things were okay for a while, but then they just started getting worse and worse. During that time, I started looking for answers to what happens in the afterlife, because when you have huge losses like that, you just want to know that they're okay. I was raised Catholic, but the religion never resonated with me. Even as a child, I had so many questions, like what happens to all the people that don't believe in Jesus? Do they just go to hell? It never made sense. But I found some books by a medium that explained where the souls go in the afterlife, and soul origins and clusters and families and things like that, and that satisfied me for the time being. And as my relationship got worse with my husband, became toxic, and my anxiety was the worst it had ever been. I couldn't even go out of the house. I had agoraphobia. I just could not function, and I couldn't understand how other people could function so easily, And I had no help except for prescription drugs, which weren't doing me any good, but making me sicker and sicker and suppressing my symptoms, and just, it was a mess. I was a mess. But I didn't know any other way. That's what I knew. That's all I knew. And then one day, I just woke up. And I was looking around like, wow, how did I get here? Whose life am I living? Who is this person? Because it's not me. And how did I get here? And I had to start looking at all of that and how I ended up where I was. I didn't realize that I could save myself. No one ever tells us that, right? We're always looking outside of ourselves for something to save us or heal us or make us feel better. And so all of that time I was looking outside myself for someone or something to make me feel better. In that victim state of mentality, that's what we do. We want someone to care enough to ask how we are and to somehow make it all better, but that never works. It just doesn't work. We have to somehow come to the point where we're ready. And I was there. I was at rock bottom. Like things couldn't have been any worse. We were losing our apartment. I had lost all my friends. We had lost the car. The cable was off. And the sheriff had come and evicted me. My husband wasn't there. He had left me there by myself. And as the manager was walking me across the parking lot with my 2 dogs and my luggage, I had just surrendered in that moment. I gave up. All my fear and worry, and just trusted that everything was going to work out, because what else could I do? And I had found within me what they call the peace that passeth all understanding. When everything is just crumbling around you and you find that inner peace and you hold on to it and you find that it gets you through. So as she was walking me across the parking lot, and she was nice enough to drive me around to women's shelters to see if they would take me, but they wouldn't because I didn't have any children. So on the way back, she mentioned that she had one more card up her sleeve, that she volunteered for a foundation that helped people that were in dire straits. So she said she would let me back in my apartment, and I would fill out the application and see if they would pay my back rent. And they did. And she was like an angel in that moment. Maria, we have since become friends, and also right after that, she had just had a baby and was looking for a nanny for when she went back to work. She was 2 months old, the baby, Valentina. And she called me one day and said they hadn't found anyone, and she was wondering if I would do it. And I jumped at the chance because I had nothing else going for me. And I didn't even know if I could do it physically. But I knew it was a blessing being sent. So I decided to do it, and when I saw the baby, she was so beautiful. And we recognized each other as souls. And she saved my life. She gave me something to live for, to get up out of bed every day and go and see the world through her eyes. And it was she was such a happy baby, so happy all the time. Never cried, never was fussy, just happy all the time. And she brightened everyone's day, not just mine, but everyone that came in contact with her. But it was such a unique perspective because she was such a wise, old soul, but at the same time, she was just a baby. And seeing things again for the first time through her eyes was so refreshing and so amazing. It just really made me realize all of the beautiful things in life I was missing out on or I had taken for granted, like the simplest things. Like seeing a squirrel for the first time, or feeling raindrops on your head. I got to experience that again through her. And it was incredibly healing for me. And so over the next few years, we had grown together and we were there for each other, and it was a beautiful time of regeneration and recovering myself, the lost parts of myself, the parts of myself that I didn't love and had taken for granted. And it made me stronger. Every day I got stronger and stronger, and things became lighter and lighter. You know, and I had read Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth and The Secret, and this was before, but, you know, the whole universe opened up for me, all these secrets that no one ever tells us. You know, I was 37 years old before I even found the law of attraction, or knew that we could control our thoughts or observe our thoughts, be the observer, instead of having to believe everything that we think and feel. And during this time, I had also dug into everything spiritual that I could, and I started healing myself deeply, looking at all my trauma and pain and suffering. And healing from it all. And I look back on that time and I don't even know how I made it through that, but I did. And I was alone doing it. And I also found out that I was an empath, and at first it seems like a curse, right? Because an unempowered empath is going to absorb everyone's thoughts and feelings and physical symptoms, and that's what I was doing all my life. That's how I had gotten so ill, because I was absorbing everybody's stuff. And in recognizing that, I was able to empower myself. However, in realizing that I was an empath, I also had the realization that I was married to a narcissist, which was shocking for me, because I had always thought of myself as a strong and confident person, and how could that happen to me? But I wasn't strong and confident at all. I had extremely low self-worth and didn't love myself at all. And so, in recognizing that, I knew that I couldn't live that life forever. And that manipulation and emotional abuse, it took me a long time to even wrap my head around the fact that I was being emotionally abused, because the abuse is so subtle and flies under the radar. It's happening right before your eyes, but you don't even realize it's happening, because that's your normal. That's what you've grown up with, and that's all you know. So it's normal. It was normal for me. And I really had to take a step back and look at that, and how I had let myself be a victim of that without even realizing it, you know. And we were suffering so much. It was so toxic, and you know, I had to worry constantly about the rent being paid and whether the electric was going to be off or not. And it was just lie after lie after lie. And the betrayal was so deep. But I couldn't blame him anymore, because that's who he was. And I had to take responsibility for my life. So as I grew stronger and stronger every day and healed more and more parts of me, I decided one day that I just couldn't do it anymore. My soul was just screaming by this point. I mean, it was just screaming every time I went near our apartment. I would get physically ill. And it was hard for me to wrap my head around that the situation was actually making me ill, but it was. I know that now. And as I learn how my body reacts to certain things, I'm learning to nurture a relationship with my body and actually listen to it when it's telling me things. So I left one day. I saved enough money for a down payment on my apartment. And I left with my clothes and my dogs. And by this time, Valentina was in preschool. So I saw her for a few hours after school every day, and I also had another beautiful little girl come into my life, Ava Rose. So I was watching her, and then some other kids from the neighborhood needed daycare, so I kind of opened a little daycare in my home, which you can see by their pictures back there. And that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. And one day, I came across Candace Crawl Goldman's page, And it was a crazy series of synchronicities that I had ended up there. And oh, I think this video is going to run out. I'm going to have to do another one. So I came across Candace Crawl Goldman's page, and she had just started something called BQH. And I was just so excited because it was everything. I had always loved the idea of, I had researched a lot about near-death experience and the afterlife, and I had always loved the idea of past life regression, but I never thought it was something that I could do. And when I found BQH, I was like, wow, this is totally meant for me. I was led there, and I realized that I'm always being led if I'm paying attention. And even down to the cardinal as that she uses as the symbol. The cardinal is my symbol for my beloved grandmother who had passed away. So I knew I was led there by spirit, and when I read about it, it was just so perfect, just heart and energy based, and you didn't need any skills. You could bring your intuition and your life skills. And I know I have many now. I have many life skills. I've healed from all of my pain and suffering, So I knew it was perfect for me. So I bought the course and I started it, but I took some time off because I had more healing work to do, especially on my body. My body was still very sick and it needed some detox. I found medical medium and found out that the reason for all my illnesses were the Epstein-Barr virus, stage 4 Epstein-Barr virus. That's what's behind lupus and endometriosis and fibromyalgia, and all of those autoimmune diseases really aren't autoimmune. They're your body is fighting a virus and toxins. So I for about a year, I detoxed my body. I did some energetic work, to release the trauma that's held and stuck in my body. And then I came back to it. I would hear, as I questioned my soul purpose here, what am I doing here on earth? I would hear the whispers, my higher self, BQH, BQH, BQH. So I went back to it and I finished the course. And as I started practicing, I realized just how profound the healing is. And it reconnects you to lost parts of yourself. And I had an aura session of my own, which is similar to BQH, and I had some BQH surrogate sessions, and I learned that I am a guide for souls in the afterlife and on earth who took their own lives because the pain of living a life on earth is just too much for some to bear. And I almost took my own life many, many times. But I came in and jumped into the chaos knowing that I would eventually find my way out and be a guide for these souls and show them that it can be done. And it can be done in all of your pain and suffering and trauma can be healed, and not just healed, but you can find the happiness and joy and love that we're cut off from when we jump in and have amnesia. We forget who we are. Earth is the only planet where you forget who you are and have to relearn over and over again. So I'm remembering who I am and healing from all of my pain and suffering and trauma and addictions and grief and loss and relationships and all of it. so much. And BQH can help people get to the root of that, of all of their issues, by visiting their past lives and reconnecting with that and realizing why they're having the issues that they're having in their lives now. It's healed sometimes instantaneously, and the most profound healings are the physical ones. I had a profound healing of my own where we released an energy from my shoulder that I've had pain in for 20 years, and it's just gone. It's just gone. That quickly, in that moment, it was gone, and it's amazing. So my mission here is to help others heal from their own pain. You know, they say that pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. And some people may scoff at that, but I found it to be very true. That we can have pain, but we don't need to suffer through it. And my hope is that I can maybe help other people not have to suffer as much as I did, and I have. Being on the other side of it, I have a unique perspective, and I know myself now. I trust myself now. And that trust is so important, because when you know yourself, you know others. And that is what I hope to do, to help others know themselves, know what their purpose and mission and life is about here on this earth, because it can be so difficult. Not one of us escapes this life without any pain. We all have some kind of pain. And I just want to offer hope to people who are struggling that it can get better. It does get better. Healing is available to all of us. We can all heal, no matter what it is, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. The healing is available, and it's within you. Only you can heal it. And BQH can offer you the tools to help you along your path and maybe make it a little bit easier. So that's a little bit of my story, just kind of the highlights. You can contact me on my Facebook page, Tena M. Dodds, Tena with an E, T-E-N-A, or Quantum Healing with Tena, Facebook page or Instagram, or email me at quantumhealingwithtena@gmail.com. Message me on Messenger. You can even find me on the Quantum Healers directory, quantumhealers.com. Yeah, so thank you for listening. I send you infinite love and blessings and healing vibes, because I know it's hard out there, but it can get easier. Thanks for listening.